It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnett Bain. Good moment, everyone.
The trailing off music, it hung around for a minute. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's dramatic, isn't it? It's got that sort of... It sounds national and syndicated.
That's right. Well, we are syndicated, but we could use a little more.
We could use a little more national footprint, don't you think?
International.
We sort of have a fingerprint, but it would be good to have a full foot out there. The full foot. So anyone that's listening in that can support that, we'll just listen up.
Yeah, that's right.
Full footprint.
Good moment.
Indeed. Indeed. A good moment, Mr. Spence. Nice. Are you a mute today? Good. All right.
He only came on. He's only probably come on twice, maybe.
And yes,
in the 4 years.
In the 4 years.
Once because he was mad at a guest who kept swearing, and he kept having to beep it.
That's right.
That was fun.
How'd you beep? Who'd you beep?
I put in the sound of a cow mooing.
You did? Oh, that's great. That was tipping sacred cows. That's right. It was Betsy Chassie. That was hysterical.
I thought it was from the Milk Marketing Board.
Maybe that's our new sponsor.
That would be good. Have we heard? We haven't heard from the new sponsor yet, have we?
Emphasize heard.
Yeah.
The new sponsor is outside.
Yeah.
So what's up with you?
I'm lit.
You are lit,
I'm
right?
so lit. So I judged a poetry slam, and it's called Get Lit.
A literature slam. This
thing was so cool. Here's what I thought was amazing. So there.
Why are you yelling?
I'm lit.
Let me turn down my...
Yeah, well, there's two ways to handle this, Barnett. You could either turn down your monitor, or you can admonish me for speaking clearly and into the mic, as I've been told many times.
It's good. It's a lot.
Do you remember how many years it took you to learn to speak into the mic? Remember that? Like our first year, the entire time, our producer kept saying, "Barnett, speak
well, you know
clearly
that
and
I'm going to fess up. There is a wind baffle on here, and we used to follow a host that is no longer with the station.
That's right. He'd spray
and I would come in. There would always be like fried egg on it, and then there'd be a Lysol. It would be like some sort of Petri dish for God knows what. I didn't want to get too close to it.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Yeah,
well,
get lit.
Yeah, so here was what was fascinating. So I got to judge the semifinals, and there were 4 or 5 schools in the semifinals. 2 schools in particular that I thought were really interesting. One was a school in Los Angeles called Harvard Westlake, which has...
Very prestigious school.
Very prestigious. It's $30,000 for high school. I mean, crazy. These kids, you test to get in.
You don't even get recess for that.
I don't know what you get for that. But well, they had 2 coaches, which was fascinating. The other was this continuation school. You good?
Yeah.
Feeling comfy?
Yeah, no, I guess got to get a little... fluff my pillows here.
All right, good. So... the continuation school.
Yep.
And these are kids who didn't make it in traditional high school, and they were at this alternative high school that was, you know, to save their high school careers, as it were. So, what was fascinating is that if you thought about it, the kids from Harvard Westlake would have a tremendous advantage, right? They did not. What carried the day was passion, creativity, intelligence. Now, don't get me wrong. These kids from Harvard Westlake were brilliant, but so were these kids from the continuation school. I mean, it was so powerful because part of what we've talked about on this show is a kind of dismantling of hierarchy. You know, that's a big part of, from my perspective, the evolution is out of this better or worse kind of hierarchy. And what carries the day is frequency. And the frequency of their passion and their commitment and their joy and their creativity leveled the playing field. I thought that was powerful.
So there was an aliveness, I'm hearing, in these kids that translated into a willingness to take chances and express themselves from the heart and not have to funnel it through all of the usual grammars.
No one told them that they were in a disadvantage. They didn't, and if they did, they didn't believe it, right?
Yeah.
So in the world of hierarchy, these kids from Harvard Westlake ostensibly have a huge advantage in life versus the kids who land in this continuation school for whatever reason. In this Get Lit, and then we're talking, so the way it works is there's a classic poem, Shakespeare, Schilling, Blake, whatever, right? And then they write their own poem. So they do the classic poem and they write their response, which is their poem. These kids handled it. I mean, their interpretation of the classic.
In the same idiom, in the same style?
Right after each other.
Nice.
I'm so
we
into
should
it.
maybe get some on.
Well, the guy who started it, I think we should get on.
Let's bring him on,
He's
and it'd be great
brilliant.
to bring a couple of these kids in too.
Let's do that.
Yeah, we'll have to get some furniture moved in here. A nice way to bring it up.
That's right.
Can we get painting as well? Can we paint the walls while we're at it? So, to this point that you're bringing up, the relationship. There's a relationship between energy and passion and the willingness to bust out of our conditioned ways of relating to the world, the rules,
these hierarchy of rules.
Yeah. So that's a good subject. That was a good segue as any that we're going to.
Well, we have the perfect guest for it.
We do, right?
See how that works?
Yeah. Who is it?
That's your job, man.
How do we know he's the perfect guest?
Well, let's find out.
Our listeners are going to be the judge of that. What we do know is we have a good friend on. GP Walsh is on, and GP is the author of The Vision and the Tao of Allowing. The Tao of Allowing.
I love it. And he's a popular radio host.
He is a popular radio host in what is the name of that show? Now I'm embarrassed. I've been on that show, and I'm embarrassed.
Conversations with G?
Is it Conversations with G? We could just ask him.
Hey, welcome to the show, GP. What the heck's the name of your show? I've listened to it, too.
I've been on it. It was great. We had a great time. What's it called?
Conversations with G.
I had it right.
God, Conversations
I
with...
should have been more confident.
You should have. You just have
I got to hang out with those kids more often. Those kids were confident.
You know, when you have a thought, you have to commit.
You have to commit one way or another.
You commit. You don't go
Even if
wishy-washy.
you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Better to
So
beg for forgiveness.
let's talk about getting lit. I mean, look, I taught high school for a minute, and getting kids inspired in the way that these kids was inspired is a stretch. And yet, they were in, and their passion and their commitment and all these other things leveled the quote-unquote playing field. Thoughts on that?
It's pretty brilliant. But I think one of the problems in regular education is these kids are inspired by not being in the system. In the system, the criteria, the judgment is always on how well you conform to the system, and there's just no energy in that. There's no passion.
I love that.
They want something that's going to really, that they can sink their teeth in, that defines them, not just how well they do by somebody else's standards, and that just lights them up. I lived over near Oakland during the 80s when the rap thing was getting started, and man, was it cool. I mean, it became very commercialized after the fact, but in the beginning, I got to hear it in its raw purity. My God, was it amazing. It was political, it was raw, it was smart, it was energetic. It was
You want to try some rhymes? Go ahead. I know you've got it in you.
I was living in Oakland, not in Oakland, but in San Francisco around the same time. I remember MC Hammer, whose real name was Stanley, and the whole scene was, I agree with you, it was really powerful how...
It was very powerful.
Yeah.
And the MC Hammers came later when it really got big.
Yeah, you're right, they did.
It really was the voice of the street. And I had the same experience when I moved to New York, and I started seeing these kids appearing on the street with either sawed-off broom handles, or maybe they had enough money to buy some drumsticks, and these white plastic paint buckets.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember
And the
that.
first time I heard that, I nearly died. The groove these kids were laying down was just like infectious.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, we want to take this conversation in a particular direction. So bear with us. As good an entry as any is the groove. Life is about the groove, is and always will be about the groove, the beat, the resonance,
And getting lit.
which is a resonance, which is
Right.
which is an energy. And you speak very powerfully about the relationship between energy and the world we experience. And I want you to gift our listeners with the 30-second thumbnail on that, and then we'll take a dive into it.
Well, the energy, we all have within us every bit of energy you need. We all came, batteries included. You have everything you need to create a life that is not only safe and sound and comfortable and has nice things in it, but it also is just redolent with passion and enthusiasm and creativity and finding ways that are uniquely yourself to it.
That's Redolent, not Ritalin.
That's correct.
That's one's the conforming version and one's the
Exactly.
finding your voice version. Right?
That is correct. I'm trying to see if I can put a patent on Redolent. So far, I got to genetically modify it or something. Then I can.
Right.
So there is a story. It's a Native American story. It's been around, but I have not heard anyone tell it quite nearly as beautifully, nearly as powerfully as you tell it, called Jumping Mouse. It's much too long for us to go into right now, but I'm going to urge all our listeners to follow up, and we'll give you a website at the end of the show and to check this out. In that story, you talk about a particular phase in our spiritual evolution, in our development, and it has to do with growing a relationship with our energies, with our frequencies, a conscious relationship with that, and developing an intimacy with it. And there is a point in that relationship when reality begins to show up in a different way. And folks get lost there is a tendency to want to get lost in there because it looks magical, and we have what will be familiar to many to our listeners as the manifestation game, where I'm getting more and more and more of what I think I want, and it tops out.
Yes.
It tops out. The energy that we're talking about, the frequency, the thrum, the beat, it tops out, and then people turn on themselves and think I'm not doing it good enough. And so I want your thoughts about that, and then I want to hear Freeman's thoughts about that too.
Well, what happens is there's a point at which our current vision runs out, right? I mean, your ambitions and your goals are contained within your idea of what's possible. And we can do a little bit of good of kind of pushing the edges on what's possible, but the reality is what's outside of we can even consider possible is our real potential, which means what we really can be. We can't not only conceive it. I mean, we certainly can't conceive it. We can't make plans for it. We can't set goals. There's no way to have a checklist to, am I making it there? Because it's completely outside of the realm of your vision. So there's a point at which you come to this total surrender to the fact that wherever it is you're headed, you don't know. And it becomes this moment of enormous faith that, oh my God, is the universe just a cruel joke? And it's just this endless cycle of, up and down and, failure and triumph? Or is there something so far beyond that what I can see that I have to go completely blind and naked into it?
Yes. There's my 2 cents. No, but the nature of an innovation, the very nature of it, is you can't see it from here.
That's correct.
Right. So there's something that wants to emerge, and at best we can have hints, but I think what you're alluding to is part of the tyranny of our cultural programming is that we organize around outcomes. We've learned to organize around what we can see and aim for that, which is fine. I mean, it's the best we know how. I think this is what Barnett was saying. And yet at some point very quickly, that tops out because we get there and we go, is this it? Because the fire or the juice or the litness underneath the impulse to go for it is actually the stuff, right?
Yeah, that's the juice.
That's the juice.
Yeah.
And so it's not really the outcome. It's something actually that may in a moment get expressed as an outcome, but it goes beyond the outcome.
It goes way beyond the outcome. One of my favorite teachers, Nizhagadatta, refers to the tyranny of what's next.
We like the word.
It's
tyranny of what's next.
The tyranny of what's... It's like the whole outcome thing is that it's never ending, right? Mm-hmm. The real ultimate is you realize that life is nothing but an infinite series of outcomes. And each one is really kind of the stepping, is just kind of complete in and of itself, and at the same time, it's the impetus for the next one. And so life has no destination anymore.
So really, our goals are an expression of limitation.
They are. Yeah, they are. Unless the goal is to simply be present in the moment, to honor whatever happens to be here now, because what else you got?
Well, and the impulse. So one of the pieces of language I like that something wants to unfold through me, right? That there's something yet unknown, yet undiscovered, but I'm committed to, feeling around in the dark until it becomes a little clearer. And even in that moment, I guess the idea is to surrender it. Like, even in the accomplishments.
In Sanskrit, they have the most beautiful word for it, and in the Buddhist text that eventually made it to English, it got translated to the word emptiness. But the Sanskrit word is shunyata, and it actually means a pregnant emptiness.
Barnett's going to like that. Hey, can we take a quick break? When we get back, I want to talk more about the pregnant empty. No, just
so
the pregnant emptiness, Barnett.
We will be back with GP Walsh after these words.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Bring us back.
Boots and cats and boots. How am I doing with the boots and cats thing? I don't seem to have the beat down, but so I'm going to move right past it. Boots and cats and boots. No, I can't get it. So we're back here with GP Walsh.
You kind of have to explain boots and cats. So Barnett, on the break, our producer was explaining that the way to learn to beatbox is to repeat boots and cats over and again.
But it doesn't have any, there's no beat in that whatsoever when I do it.
No, you're right. That's not to say that it's not a great tip. It's just
great tip. But no one is going to see over from the controls. We get the real boots and cats thing. So we were talking about
the pregnant emptiness.
The falling in love with what is as yet unborn. It's always a love story. But there is a place, threading back to your beautiful telling of Jumping a Mouse, in that story, which is about a seeker. There is a place, there is a heaven that this heroic mouse finds. For all intents and purposes, it seems like heaven. There is someone who abides there and has a life with all of the creature comforts and all of the desires met. And yet this heroic mouse understands this. There is more. And to enjoy this, and then to open to the more of it. Yes. And so many of us, myself included, flirt with the fleeting, the false comfort of thinking that if I can have my desires met in the way that I conceive of them, the forms met, that would be heavenly, that really would be heavenly. And it's so tempting to stop there.
Yeah.
Say more?
Yes,
it's radio, GP.
I wasn't sure where the lead-in was going to stop. Yes. Well, again, it's the whole idea that if I actually satisfy something that I've been seeking, there is an enormous sense of satisfaction in that. Mm-hmm. But the thing we don't understand about desires is that there is no end to them. They're a wheel. The moment one is satisfied, another one arises to take its place. And we can see life as being nothing more than the treadmill of seeking the satisfaction of desires. Or we can step back and take a look at the treadmill and find out, is there something more to this? Is there a bigger picture to this? And the more you see, the less satisfying the satisfaction of desires actually becomes, because you see it as kind of an endless cycle. And it is. If you look at life, that is the way it works. It's just one desire after another. And the only thing that becomes truly satisfying then is the pure presence with yourself, with the one who's witnessing the coming and going of all these desires, because that doesn't have any desires. It is in a state of perfect satisfaction at all times. As a matter of fact, you come to realize that when a desire is fulfilled, what happens is the energy of wanting dissipates for a second, and the energy of having, or satisfaction, which has been there all along, is felt for a moment.
So there is a beautiful quote by Schopenhauer, which I'm going to misquote.
Just so everyone's clear about
So
that.
just a heads up to everyone. Don't expect this to be accurate remotely. A man
Commit, Barnett, commit.
Commit. That's not going to not let facts stand in the way of a good quote. A man can do what he wants to do, but he can't want what he wants to want.
Yeah.
And it suggests to me that the domain that we're operating in, there is this paradox of both free will and a destiny self-chosen, and a destiny that is a gift that is not free will, and the paradox is that both exist simultaneously. So the domain that we're operating in of the wants is Soulcraft.
Yeah, and that is the beautiful paradox that is all of life. There is the energy of the desires, and the desires of the things that you really don't choose. I didn't choose my hair color. I didn't choose, how tall I was going to be. There's a lot of things in life that aren't a choice. Life makes those choices for you. But then there are those other things that seem to touch at the very nature of who you are, and it's kind of funny. I end up just saying, you know what? There's no such thing as free will. There's the choices of life, and there's the choices that emerge out of who you really are. And neither one of those is really a choice. They're just the paths that the energy happens to take. And one is close to the soul. One is actually who you are. You can't disobey your own nature. That's simply it. You can't.
Again, something wants to emerge.
And when something wants to emerge, it's going to emerge. You can fight it, you can resist it, and you can suffer in the
resistance.
result, or you can just accept that there is this energy, there is this destiny, there is this spirit within you, that's just bound and determined to come out and express itself as your life.
I love that language too. Beautiful paradox. We've used the expression "beautiful chaos" on this show because chaos so often feels disorganizing, as does paradox. That we're holding something as true and not true, and we can stand in the middle of it. We've said in the show before that the center of paradox is the point of power, where you can hold it as true and not true and simply direct your energy towards that which you prefer. I don't know if that language resonates with you, but I love that language, beautiful paradox. It's an embracing of the...
it's like Marx Brothers language. It's like a beautiful pair of ducks.
That's correct.
I'm a surfer, and you catch a
That's
wave.
an overstatement, but
It is an overstatement. You catch a wave, and you will ride it to the beach. It will take you to the beach. How you get to the beach, you can cut back, and you can, how you can go to the nose. Well, I can't, but you can. What you do on that ride to the beach is entirely within your, or largely within your own domain. But you will be taken to the beach.
You will be taken to the beach. Yes, that's absolutely correct. And that's the wonder of it as a paradox. You know what? It's not a paradox to life. It's a paradox to our minds. Because our minds being object-oriented, they can't see. It has to see one side or the other. It has to take a perspective. But reality has no perspective. The way life actually is, the way the universe actually works, is that both of those are equally true, and it has no inner conflict with them whatsoever.
That's a marvelous distinction that you make, that it is the mind that creates the paradox, and that life is an infinite unfolding. By the time we're finished shoehorning it through logic and reason, it looks like facts are facts, as my dad used to say.
Yeah, that's right. And that's just one of the lenses that we see it through. And it's a good lens. It's a very useful lens. I mean, it saved us from a lot of superstition to have that ability for reason and logic, but it's also lost a lot of things along the way. There's just that intuitive knowing that has nothing to do with logic.
That's where we have poets, and that's where we have the
right.
lit program.
And get lit. Yeah, and one of the things that we've done on this show is we've defined, for better or for worse, we've defined consciousness as the ability to hold dynamic complexity. Dynamic meaning things are always changing, and complex meaning there's layers and layers and layers. And they don't have to be resolved. That we're okay, again, in the middle of the contradiction, to the degree that we're not freaking out, then all's well.
I tell you, that's the day of liberation. I can remember the day, you know what? It's okay that none of this stuff actually makes
It's messy.
messy.
Yeah, that's the good news.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like that. I'm not here to clean it up.
Well, and the getting lit part is falling in love with the possibility.
Yeah.
It's the sacred I don't know. It's the space wherein something's going to emerge.
It's the ride to the beach.
It's the ride to the beach. It's
Yeah,
falling
it
in
is.
love with the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Versus trying to genetically modify it or control it or manipulate it or make it the way, again, organize it into the 5 possible outcomes we can think of with our small mind.
Yes. Yeah, which are very narrow and have very narrow ambitions.
Yeah.
Safety, status, power.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah,
you're
and
a
they all
jumping mouse.
boil down to the extremely primitive urge to simply be safe, which, control my environment so that I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you're safe as long as I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very primitive urge, and it's a real one. We all have the need to be safe. We all make decisions based on safety. But if that's the only thing we ever do, we never enjoy any of the richness or diversity of life. And life itself seems to be a problem to be solved rather than an incredible experience to be enjoyed.
Well,
That perspective right there is powerful. That perspective right there is so amazing, because if I can really get into, get curious about what's showing up versus, again, so quick to define it as good or bad, right or wrong, in or out, really, as Barnett likes to say, put the clutch in on what we think we know. We've talked about this in the past in terms of how being an expert, both Barnett and I have put on that hat more times than we care to admit, and how the minute we do that, it's like we've limited ourselves. Can we be, and it doesn't mean we can't have expertise. I think we can,
Yeah.
and yet in service to something yet undiscovered, right?
Yeah. Zen mind, beginner mind.
Yes.
It's always starting over again. It's like right in this moment. I have some background, I have some useful stuff, but if this moment really is unique, I got to show up without an agenda. And if I do, then my natural instincts to be able to respond to the moment are absolutely liberated. But if I show up with an agenda, I'm going to try to force the experience into the mold that I know. And, of course, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss the whole thing.
Not just that, it's a rerun of what you did yesterday.
Usually, as you say, tied to issues that have to safety issues.
Yeah.
They're almost always about safety or loss of love.
Yep.
Same thing. So which begs the question, is it uncertainty that frightens us, or is it fear of the change on the road to uncertainty?
No, I think it's a fear of the change. Change by definition means things aren't going to remain the same. If they're not remaining the same, I can't control the environment, which means I'm not safe. That's the trigger. It is so fundamental, and it happens over and over and over again. Even when, you go through transformational work and the change is incredibly desirable. It's actually a better, safer place you're going to go to, but there's this intransience that says, well, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it is in the nature of being a human,
Yes.
that we will experience the dread of change.
Yes.
We will experience it, and it's very, very familiar to me to look outside myself and say, God, if only I had that situation, or if only I could have a situation like this person or her or like him. I mean, then I would be immune to the kinds of changes that I have calibrated my own safety to.
Talk about it,
but
tyranny.
no one gets a pass.
And just the tyranny of that comparing, and it's just brutal, because again, the uniqueness is so rich, and yet we keep defining ourselves in such limiting terms. Like, what a disaster!
Yes. Yeah, it's tragic.
It's tragic.
If we can accept,
I'm hanging my head in shame.
Resistance to change is going to be there, right? It's just a given. Okay, it's there.
Yeah.
I don't have to even fight with that anymore. I can honor it. I can recognize it. I can acknowledge it when it speaks. And at that moment, when I stop trying to get rid of it, I become the master. Because now I can choose, even though it's present. I can actually go, well, okay, I get it. This isn't safe, but we're going to do this anyway.
We were talking in a coffee shop before the show. We were talking about the experience of a freelance life. both Freeman and I have long been freelancers, and we
Right.
realized that we're not only freelancers occupationally, we are freelancers in every expression of what it is to be alive. Our relationships are freelance. Our loves are freelance. Our meaningful relationships and satisfying work, freelance. That we are always and only 100% responsible for every moment across the board. And
because the menu that's handed to us, if we were to go into an agreement, into a role defined by someone else, is too constrictive. Neither Barnett or I.
well, you're giving away power. You're not living an authentic life. You're living a hand-me-down life.
And I know from what you do, GP, that this involves you. So I'm going to just cast the net and grab you as well, that you've lived your life very much along these same lines, that no one's ever said, oh, here's the job you'd fit perfectly into.
Yeah, and you know, I learned over the years that the carrot was always freedom, was always safety.
Yes.
The carrot was always safety. You're right.
safety.
And I lament
safety.
that almost daily. Like there's a part of me, and this is the way I think that we all hold it, is that there's a part of me that, you know, sort of longs for, well, what if I just took a job? You know, because then I wouldn't have to recreate myself.
It's a part of us that is longing to not have to be responsible
That's true.
for the quality of my own consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought it up because for so long, ever since I was a little boy, it has always been focused only around job security and work. It was so in my parents' life. That was the focus of it. And for most of my life, and I still have Velcro around that. But it is increasingly clear to me that the responsibility for my life is not exclusive to financial security, but it is to emotional security, relational security. It is 100% responsible. I am 100% a freelancer in every expression of what it is to be alive, and so is everyone else.
Well, and what you like to say, Barnett, is there's no absolutes and guarantees. I mean, that is a hard day to come up against that sort of emergent reality and go, wait a minute, you know, everything that I've given my...
You don't come up against it in one shot unless you do, I suppose. But this whole, we keep hearing, the language always creeps me out a little bit, but, you know, the shift.
Or the awakening.
That is certainly, whatever it is. I mean, it's all creepy. Whatever it is, loving and growing is an expression of taking more and more responsibility.
Yeah.
Hey, can I say something about why it's creepy? Go ahead.
You know, and that responsibility is simply honoring the quality of the energy that's within you. I mean, this isn't like you're making something up. Mm-hmm. You know, you're consulting with your own heart. You're consulting with your own nature. It is the most deeply honoring thing you can possibly do. And, you know, it doesn't take much to realize when you're selling that out for mere safety.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things about what makes it creepy, this is a different conversation, and we're actually coming to the end of this segment, but I just want to say it because it's in my brain, is the packaging and the, you know, of the shift and of the awakening. Like, let's go sell the awakening now. And it demeans the sacredness of the process, at least in my mind.
Does that mean we're canceling the telesummit?
That's right. That's exactly right. Or we'll have to call it something, right? Less, you know, how do we market and pitch awakening and shift? You know, so there's something really sacred and really beautiful about the process. But the minute we give it a name, then it's almost the same thing. We're making it, you know, a job that's defined by someone else as opposed to an organic, natural process that finds its own form.
Yes, and is finding its own form, no matter what we call it. And, you know, the reality of something like that is happening. But, yeah, you're right. It gets jumped all over. And everybody wants to put it in a box. I mean, you name something, and now it's like you can contain it. You can't contain reality. Sorry.
That's it.
You know,
3 easy steps or 7 steps or whatever the heck it is. You know, no.
And ultimately, you don't want to. Ultimately, the measure of your life, the blessing of your life, is discovering that you have the inner resources to deal with whatever happens.
Beautiful.
There is no plan, there is no program, there's no script you have to follow. Your natural resources emerge at the moment they're needed. That's the most power there is. That's the highest vibration that is. That's the ultimate. There's nothing beyond that.
Well, what's beyond that is we have to break for commercials because otherwise we're really unsafe.
Really unsafe with management.
I always love to be with you, GP.
Such a gift.
It was a pleasure to have you today. We will have you back. I think I'm seeing you in a few short weeks anyway. Before we let you go, please let our listeners know where they can catch up with where you are, what you're doing, who you're being.
Well, there's a couple of sites you can go to. One is gpwalsh.com, which is the easiest.
How do you spell that?
GP Walsh, WALSH.com.
Oh, the easy way. That's nice.
And I've actually just started a new site called MasterHeartInstitute.com, which is basically where I'm putting all of my teachings are going to go there. So gpwalsh.com will direct you to everything else.
Awesome.
That's beautiful.
Well, we're going to direct to a break, but again, thank you so much, GP, for spending the time with us.
And what a delight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For those of you listening,
say hi to your fantastic spouse.
Barnett wants you to say hi to your wife for him.
I will.
Okay. And for those of you listening, stay tuned because we'll be right back after these messages here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain. That was great.
Yeah, he's fun.
Great. How's a freelance conversation?
Well, we're freelancers. There is no safety net.
Nope.
And that's a big one to let in. That is a really, really big one to let in. This dread
It
comes
requires a certain level of maturity.
It is a difficult journey. I just in real time I'm understanding that what was referred to in some of the sort of esoteric traditions, the kind of Arthurian legends as well of the chapel's perilous, the bridge of belief, of which you go up the bridge and it doesn't connect to the other side. The chapel's perilous, this narrows, and you move through that narrows, facing the understanding, coming to grips with the understanding that we're all freelance. There's no absolutes. There is no guarantees. There is no way to outthink life, and that all the strategies fall apart. And as you stay in that space, we go off on one side into feeling self-pity, and then you got to get off of that because that's a sinkhole, and then you continue, and then you'll fall off on the other side of maybe feeling blame, or maybe feeling denial, or maybe feeling hurt, or maybe all of the kinds of distractions, or numb as an aesthetic, all the distractions that take us away from feeling the feelings of pure expression of whatever is going to come up that is not familiar. And then we're in the virgin territory.
The empty...
So I'm sharing this. I'm sharing this because it is a very alive exploration for me.
Big time.
I find myself waking up frequently in the terrors and moving consciously through the chapel's perilous of realizing, well, all of my feelings about this stuff, I'm fearful, I'm anxious, they're also familiar. So what if I acknowledge that and then stay in the middle. Then what happens? And every once in a while, more and more frequently, what happens is I will connect with a sense of real safety and real love and a real experience of mattering and of artistry in this.
There are things I've learned to trust. And they have more to do, again, the language we've used is sort of resonance. There's something in them that, I know to trust it. For example, I mean, we go back to judging this Get Lit, this poetry slam. I wrote the day after I went and saw it, yes, but also judged it, to the guy who organized it and said, I want to get involved. I want to coach for you as a volunteer. And, you know, as I'm writing this, I know I've got very little time in my schedule, but I'm just going to make time because that was important to me. There was enough there that I want involved in that, you know, and I've learned to trust that. And, you know, this show is an example of that, but lots of things in my life they don't make rational sense. Like, you know, it's hard sometimes to say, well, how do these threads all fit together? You know, honestly, I don't know, other than they all stir me they all light me up in a particular way. And I find a way to make a living, and I find a way to, you know, do whatever I have to do within the constrictions of the four walls of the reality I'm navigating, you know, this sort of established reality. But the emergent possibility is absolutely more intriguing than just doubling down on what I did yesterday and what everyone says things are supposed to look like. You know, and that's made all the difference. To quote the poet, the road less traveled. Yeah. It's a great thing. I mean, you know, but I go back to the idea that it's a maturity, you know, and I'm not making maturity hierarchy. At least I don't want to.
You're making it developmental.
It's developmental. It's just a stage you get to and you go, okay, I'm okay with not knowing. You know, it's a big deal. You know, when we've been told and taught, look, kid, facts are facts. This is how the way the world works. What Grandpa said, you know. Well,
I was raised in an environment, in a family, in a culture where things, particularly now that I'm 60 years old, soon to be 61 years old, where things like retirement plans and IRAs and insurance trusts and all of these kinds of things were critical, and I don't have any.
Well, you tried. It just didn't work out that well.
Didn't work out because life...
Your life is not about that.
My life has other plans.
And I think, you know, one of the... it's become a
bit... By the way, I'm not suggesting that this is a great idea, but I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm simply sharing where lots of the anxiety, if I want to visit the Anxiety Game Institute, that's, you know, it's that story can generate a lot of that kind of constrictive juice for me.
And enough of you knows that it's going to be okay. And this is not a naive kind of throwing caution to the wind kind of behavior. This is just an understanding that a lot of things that you once hold as critical have become less important, in part because in your life they've just washed away. In whatever reason, who knows why. And then we're faced with what's really important. Look, what I was trying to say is that it's almost become cliche, but that end of life story of all the things I wish I'd done. You know, and it's you know, and it's never about, well, if I had just, you know, put a little more in my IRA, or if I just played it a little safer in my life. It's never that. It's always, I wish I'd risked a little more. I wish I'd gone for it.
We get to, from what I have learned from speaking to people who are in hospice or who deal with folks at the end of their life, or even from my own experience of my mother at the end of her life, you come to a place where you do get present.
Yeah.
You're not futurizing, and you make peace with the past, and you are absolutely in the moment. And in the moment, there are sometimes the sweet sorrows about I did not attend to my friends. I lost relationships that could have been developed and made meaningful. The things that matter in the moment to us, the qualities of those experiences, we don't have we don't have habits in the way that the conditions of our life are designed to support. We don't have habits where we know how to appreciate the moment.
Unless we do. Unless we, you know.
We have to develop them ourselves.
That's the maturing process. That's the freelance mentality.
Yes, we're all going to go freelance.
Well, I think
unless we don't.
I think it's interesting because as the world is moving towards something where people are required to be more and more responsible, the systems that we've...
More freelancers.
Yeah, there's more freelancers. The systems that we've created are falling apart, and there's an appropriateness they're falling apart. I'm not saying it's not scary and difficult and, what happened to our union and why don't we have this anymore, and there's no job security and the world's changing so fast. And the criticalness is, can you find a way to create value? Can you find a way to reinvent yourself? Are you adapting, to a changing world? And
what do you think is the... I don't want to oversimplify this, but I'll risk it anyway. What do you think is the critical piece here? The critical add-on here?
I don't know. I'm not trying to...
I have a feeling that I have a knowing that a different kind of relationship with our emotional life, with our emotions, is a key to it. A willingness to deeply, deeply feel and release whatever comes up is a key to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, we're going to conclude.
Deeply feel and release our time with you, listeners, today. It's been lots of fun. It's always fun.
Yep. And we invite you, of course, to join us on all of our pages and keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.